This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Heart Mojo with Melinda Smith and her guest. So tell us who your guest is.
Well, I want to welcome Sue Budenbaum, who's become a good friend of mine. We do a lot of things together out in the community, and she has a wonderful company called BigHearted Blooms. And we're going to talk about that today and how she meets the challenges to give back in the community to spread a little kindness. But in the meantime, I want to hear about you first. So tell us a little bit about you and then how you kind of got to this point. And I know you do other things in the community as well.
Sure. So this current venture of mine, BigHearted Blooms, is really kind of my fourth career. So I've had a long career in business, in management consulting, and in technology fields. And now I'm a writer also for B2B organizations, professional services organizations. And so it's been kind of a winding path for the last many decades. I am a Cleveland transplant, but I've been here a long time. And I have a great family and supportive friends, and yeah, things are good.
Good. Well, so you do other things in the community besides BigHearted Blooms. I kind of want to work our way to that. What were you doing before BigHearted Blooms with nonprofit?
So I've always been involved in PTOs. So I've been at a district level and at a school level PTO presidents for many different times. I ran a community garden for my church. So I was responsible for maintaining a 30-person garden for quite a long time. And then we've done a lot of things for cancer, Alzheimer's, veterans. My husband and I are very interested in those three areas in particular. And so we have done a fair amount of volunteering and fundraising for those organizations as well.
So tell us how you got to BigHearted Blooms. Like what made you think of this? Give me the path to get you there.
Sure. So it actually started about 10 years ago now. Wow. When I met a woman named Harriet, and Harriet was having a really tough day. She was older and frail, and she was receiving chemotherapy. And she had come in on a transport vehicle, and she was leaving on a transport vehicle, and she was just having one of those days where she was terrified. And I happened to be sitting in the chemo chair next to her getting my fourth round of chemo. But the difference was I had a huge support network and people to help me once I got home. And she was dealing with what can be a pretty difficult disease to battle alone. And I started talking to her, and not about anything important, just to kind of distract her. And you could see very visibly that she calmed, that her anxiety went away. And, it just took a few minutes and she was just in a much better mental state. And that really stuck with me. And so I met many people like Harriet through my cancer journey. And my mother also had Alzheimer's. And so I spent a lot of time in nursing homes and various care facilities with her. And even though she became non-communicative, I would make an effort to speak to or bring little gifts to the other people that were in the facility with her. And again, small acts of kindness can make a huge difference. So about 6 years ago, I was reading about an organization in Knoxville, Tennessee, called Random Acts of Flowers, that was recycling flowers to do random acts of kindness, to give to others in the community as a random act of kindness. And I just thought it fit me perfectly in terms of my understanding of what acts of kindness can do for individuals, in terms of our ability to serve lots of different care communities with one gesture. So I sort of jumped off a cliff and I founded BigHearted Blooms. And we repurpose flowers. So we gather up flowers from weddings and funerals and grocery stores, wherever they've served their first purpose. And we pick through those, and we have a large number of volunteers who come and rearrange those flowers into individual arrangements. And then we take them out to people primarily in care facilities, but around the community, who just need a bit of an emotional boost. And our flowers are the vehicle by which we touch individuals and make them know that the community cares about them and hasn't forgotten them.
So you mentioned your volunteers. Did you have a question, Karen?
No, I'm just amazed with this.
It's a very cool program. And actually my club, Zonta, which some of you may have already seen, we've done a podcast and we'll be doing more with them. Sue's been involved with us as well. And she's helped us out with our 100th birthday by donating lovely flowers, which then we took right back and redonated somewhere else, right?
Yeah, they got a third life.
They got a third life, but we volunteered for you. So tell them what's involved with volunteering. Like, what do they have to do? Do you have to have a lot of experience? Tell me about the different types of people who volunteer.
Sure. So we are almost an entirely volunteer organization. We do have a couple of part-time helpers, but we have up until very recently been an all volunteer organization, and we use about 40 volunteers a week in different roles. We have people who are around the city who pick up flowers for us. We have little pods of people around the city that will go to grocery stores or make certain pickups in their zone and bring them in. So that's an easy volunteer opportunity because it's planned and you're in your car and you just do the pickup and the drop off. You can do it with kids in the car or whatever. We also then have a warehouse where we have workshops 3 to 4 times a week, where we have groups and individuals who come in and help to sort the flowers and rearrange the flowers. And then we have delivery, which was what Zonta did. And we then have delivery volunteers. So we have folks who go out into the facilities and hand distribute the flowers.
So are they all come in vases? Do you have some that are just, wrapped? How do the flowers when they get to these people, how are they?
Typically they're in a vase. So we use all recycled vases as well. So we operate entirely on donated vases and jars. And typically they are going
donated a bunch.
Donate. So then we can talk about that. But they usually arrive in a vase if they're going to someone who's in a residential facility. We also do sometimes make bouquets, which is basically without a vase, like in a sleeve, because we also serve a lot of outpatient communities that will be taking the flowers home. So that might be a senior day center or a dialysis center or outpatient cancer treatment, things like that. So we do both, but primarily vases.
Well, don't you give some to our workers, our hard working people in these facilities, in these communities?
We do, but not as much. We definitely supported the caregivers and others during the pandemic. So we were a pretty young organization. We founded in 2018. That was kind of a pilot year. 2019, we were getting our legs under us, and then the pandemic hit. So 2020 hit. So we lost our flower sources because we were primarily depending on weddings and corporate events for flowers, and we weren't able to get into the facilities to actually deliver to residents. So we had to do some reinvention, and so during that time, we served frontline workers. So we would surprise all different kinds of frontline workers with our flowers, from postal workers and pharmacists to the cleaning staff at the Cleveland Clinic, or, of course, doctors and nurses, but just a lot of other types of caregivers, to make sure that they knew that the community appreciated that they were out there on the front lines when we were all in quarantine. So we do still give to teachers sometimes, and to, caregivers in facilities, and to nursing staff. If we have enough flowers, we definitely do that. But our primary goal is to reach people who are lonely and isolated.
Right. It's interesting. You mentioned the pandemic. That's actually how we met.
Yes.
Because I'm part of the Cleveland Senior Network, and we had to get inventive during COVID to be able to reach out to the case managers and to the different communities. And we danced. We danced every week. We still do some of that line dancing, and Sue got involved in line dancing, and it was a unique way to deliver the flowers at the end of the dancing.
That's been a great
dancer.
That's been a great program for BigHearted Blooms, and for me personally, because it does give me an opportunity to actually hand deliver the flowers, and just the reactions of the residents kind of gives me the energy to keep on going and keep on building this organization. But yes, you and I, what was it, maybe 4 years ago, we met, or 3 years ago. Yeah, doing my math wrong. But yeah, that was a way for us to try to get out into the community when it was very difficult to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I can personally attest to the fact that when you hand them flowers, they just light up. They really do. And it doesn't matter male or female, right? A lot of times people think of giving female flowers, but the men like it too. Or they'll say, no, give mine over to so-and-so. It's very sweet.
It is very sweet.
Yeah, between the dancing and the flowers, I think that sometimes that just makes their day. They really look forward to that. In fact, we get repeat requests frequently, but there's a lot of need out there. So we do try to change places, mix it up a little bit, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we're doing the dancing, or when we're taking, 50 bouquets into a facility, the energy in the space just goes up immediately, right? It just, you can tell that people are excited, that, and then they have the flowers left in their room to remember that they've been touched. So it has a lingering effect. So I think it's interesting how such a small act of kindness can have such a big impact for, on people's emotional health and for days to come.
Absolutely. Even for me, seeing the flowers, it's just home and flower show. I always look forward to that home and flower show to see fresh flowers, right? It happens the same way to the seniors who can't get out and do those things,
Right.
maybe can't enjoy outside,
Right.
especially if it's real hot or real cold. So moving forward with this, you heard about this company, you jumped in, but how did you make that process? How did you meet the challenge of that process? Because I do a lot of volunteer work myself, but it's a big nut to take on to look at that and say, how do I make this a nonprofit? How do I make contact with the stores, the weddings,
Yeah.
things like that?
Yeah, I may have not given it enough thought before I jumped in. I just kind of had this emotional pull. And so I just started down a path without a lot of thought about where it was going to be 5 years later. I essentially coerced some friends into being on the board, and I applied for a 501c3, and I didn't know how to do any of that, but actually the Attorney General of Ohio has a how to start a nonprofit handbook, so that was helpful. I have a business background, so many aspects of this were something I felt confident about, but I had no real nonprofit management experience at all, and I didn't really understand the nuances of fundraising and all those kinds of things. So I've had a big learning curve, but I just and maybe if I thought about it too much, I wouldn't have jumped in so aggressively, but it's worked out. So basically my mother had been in a care facility, and so I went to that facility because I knew them, and asked if we could pilot this idea. We actually bought flowers the first couple of times that we did it, just to be able to practice and see what the process should look like. And then I actually had a friend of a friend whose daughter was getting married at the art museum in Cleveland, and which is a very big venue. And the florist wanted to have a conference call with all of the vendors to make sure that we were all aligned, because there's a lot of security, obviously, at the venue. And she asked me, she didn't know I'd never done it before. She asked me, how big of a truck are you bringing to get the flowers? And I said, I wasn't planning to bring a truck. I was going to bring personal cars. And she said, well, how many cars are you bringing? And we kind of went back. I said, well, how many do I need? We kind of went back and forth, and we ended up filling 10 pickup trucks and minivans full of flowers that night. I had like 10 volunteers I recruited to go to the art museum at 12:30 at night and help me do this. And so basically I pulled a lot of friendship levers to try to get this started. And and then I knew when I had 10 pickup trucks and minivans full of flowers that I was onto a big idea. And we kind of just took off from there. So
where did they go? Because that was your first one. I know you have an office now, but where did they go then?
Yeah, so the first couple of years we did not have space. I actually had friends who ran a workshop, like a company that did workshops, and they were closed on Sundays and Mondays. So we would pick up the flowers on Saturday night. We would take them to their space. We would arrange on Sundays, deliver on Mondays, clean the space for them to open again on Tuesdays. And we did that for a while. So that's kind of how we bridge the gap. But I think there are many organizations like ours in the country now. It's kind of been a big pickup. So I think there's at least 30 or 35 organizations like BigHearted Blooms, and they all do it differently. Some work out of church basements, some work out of their kitchens, some have jumped in with infrastructure like I have. So, there's lots of ways to do it.
Right. You just have to find what works for you.
You just have to find what you do.
But it was a big challenge because you jumped in, not really knowing what to expect. And then all of a sudden you've got all of these flowers, nowhere to go. So how did you reach out to like do you talk to florists who talk to the wedding, or is it
to get the flowers? A lot of our event flowers come in through event planners and wedding planners. A lot of them do that. I mean, that was a great start for me because I connected the first batch of vendors through that event,
right,
and continued to work with them. And then, the word has kind of just spread organically. But we do get a lot of referrals through event planners, and also now through florists who know us, and occasionally from the event center, but not as often, mostly through wedding planners and florists, and now from brides themselves who have seen us on social media. So
God, and said, yes, I want to make sure I get a second life out of the flowers, because I always thought about that. We put together these beautiful centerpieces. I've done a lot of nonprofit work. They spend $25, $30, $50 on a centerpiece, and then what happens to it?
Yeah,
right. So this is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, and most of the community, the event community, are really happy that we're here now, because they don't like to see the stuff getting bagged in the trash either. And so the fact that we're kind of coming in and providing that piece of service that they can offer to their clients, and it also just gives them peace of mind. They're environmentally conscious, and they love the idea that we can extend the life of these flowers. So it's just worked out. It's a win-win.
Helping the environment is important, but I'm going to throw a money question in. Since you're a nonprofit, is it a write-off for that bride or to donate the flowers to you?
We typically just tell them to ask their accountant, right? So okay. I think to some extent, yes, although a full floral budget isn't probably not, because there's a lot that goes into that budget besides.
Right, you would need all of it, but I'm just wondering, I'm sure somebody else besides me was sitting there thinking, I just spent this much on all these centerpieces. Can I deduct part of that? Because weddings are expensive.
Yes, I mean, we'll provide receipts, and then they'll take it from there. Also, the flowers that are donated to us from grocery stores and wholesalers, they definitely write that off. So
I'm sure they do.
Provides an
opportunity for them. How'd you make your grocery store contacts?
I think we went knocking on the door to Trader Joe's first, because we knew that they would probably align to our cause, and we just kept working with them, and they're very generous to the community. So they were pretty quick to jump on board. So they now deliver to us twice a week, or we pick up from them twice a week. And then we went to Heinen's, and
because they're local.
It's a grocery store that's local. So we've been building out their chain, and they're very supportive as well. And it's just kind of grown from there. So, we barely touch the floral supply that's going into the trash right now. I mean, considering what we're able to do, we do it with very few relationships in terms of, grocers and wholesalers and funeral homes and things. There's a tremendous opportunity to gather more flowers.
But there's only so many of you to be out there to do it, right?
Right. I mean, I have, big growth ambition, but it does take the flowers and the volunteers and the resources to deliver, right? So it's got to kind of all grow in tandem.
So have you grown to where you're doing fundraisers now, where, people can not only volunteer their time, but maybe just support you with financially?
Yes. In fact, we're having our first big fundraiser in September. It's called Bloomfest. It's our first attempt to really, do a major event to help fund our growth. And it's a 6 to 9 p.m. cocktail party, fashionably floral, upscale affair with a live music and things. And we're hoping that so far the planning is going well, and we're hoping that that's going to be a big success for us. We are, largely a volunteer organization, and we're very lucky that there are a lot of people interested in volunteering with us, because who doesn't want to be immersed in flowers? And they love just being able to do a random act of kindness, the sort of pay it forward activity. So we're very fortunate that our volunteer base has grown on its own, and we haven't had to work too hard at that. So that also means that we rely heavily on volunteers, which makes our financial needs less, but we do have to pay for our facility and our utilities and our, insurance and liabilities and things like that. So we are an organization that does need a budget, but it doesn't need $1 million budget. So we just have. Do you
find you have enough vases? I mentioned earlier that I just donated. I'm cleaning out things out of a locker and found I had a whole box of vases. I don't really need a whole box of vases. You don't even know how you collect them. But would that be helpful if people decided they wanted to donate that, or even jars? Don't you like pickle jars and things like that as well?
We do. We use glass jars. We'll decorate them with a ribbon or something to make them look a little bit better. But yes, vases and jars are always needed. So a lot of folks will do a vase drive for us, either at a school or business or just around their neighborhood, and collect vases and donate them to us. And we very much appreciate that, because we use probably 250 vases a week. So we always need vases coming in.
Now you know why you need volunteers for all of those vases.
Right. So it's a pretty big, it's a pretty big operation, actually. So
can anybody, is there an age limit for volunteering? Can kids groups get together and volunteer, like Girl Scouts? I know our club did, but we're older women. I hate to put myself in that category, but older women.
Yeah.
So who can come volunteer?
So anyone can volunteer. It's a kind of a shift work, done in a day kind of work. So we have a sign up, and you just pick your 2-hour slot or your activity that you want to do, and you come. It doesn't require any background training or any background checking or any long-term commitment. It's very much a shift-oriented model. And we will children 12 and older can come by themselves. Children under 12 can come with an adult. We do have like teen groups and all kinds of groups that come in. I lost my train of thought, but all kinds of groups are able to volunteer in the workshop. And if they don't want to actually arrange flowers, then they can do many other things that we need done, from washing vases and organizing and cleaning and whatever. So we welcome all ages. And so like a Girl Scout group could potentially come if they had enough adults with them. Right. So we've done some stuff out in the community. We also have a program, like we call it BHB on the go, where we will take flowers out to a center and do flower arranging with a group of seniors or a group of children, and then allow them to kind of pay it forward themselves. So for instance, we might do flower arranging with an independent living or an assisted living group, and then they'll take the flowers over to those in skilled nursing and kind of surprise them. So it's kind of they get to also get the joy of giving and not just doing the activity itself.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It proves that you can figure out ways to make your wonderful ideas work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's about kindness. It's about kindness, but it's also just about sort of battling social isolation, which is, a public health crisis actually at this point. So I think we all experienced some of that during the pandemic, and there's a lot of people in our community who live with it day in and day out. And it's like the number one risk factor among the social determinants of health. So there's a lot of organizations in our community who are very focused on battling social isolation, like Metro Health and other hospitals. And so we have been very fortunate to be able to team up with them to try to get into the community in an impactful way.
So do you go everywhere in the Northeast Ohio area? Are you limited by your location?
So we're somewhat limited by where our volunteers are at this point. So we do go from most of Northeast Ohio, either ourselves or through partners. We are primarily focused on Cuyahoga County, which is the primary county of Cleveland. I think 70% of our flowers go into Cuyahoga County. And then about half of those are in the city of Cleveland itself, and some of the underserved facilities that don't have the resources to do activities and things that others in the suburbs do. We're 70% seniors, but we're also 30% others, because we try to be able to reach people that are dealing with, difficult life challenges beyond maybe what they're experiencing in a care facility. So we go to alcohol and drug rehab. We go to, as I said, dialysis. We do cancer patients. We do a lot of different touches that are not seniors specifically.
I could say, have you been to Gathering Place?
Yes. Both east and west.
I know that they do a lot of craft type things so people can put their art skills out there, or teenagers, for them to work through their grief and what they're going through. I could see where this would be very healing for them.
Yeah.
You're recycling the flowers, you said 2-3 times sometimes. What is happening, or are you involved in, when the flowers can no longer be recycled amongst people? Or is there a recycling place where people can take those flowers or use them for craft?
So we always encourage, we're partners with Rust Belt Riders, which is a organization here in town that recycles primarily food waste, but also plant waste, to create soil that they then sell. And we encourage people to try to get onto their program, because it's kind of the largest and easiest to connect to. We compost everything in our facility that we don't use. So we try to make sure that if we can only use half of what's coming in, that other half is getting recycled. But we obviously can't control once they're out into the community what happened. But we do try to encourage that. And then we're talking about 2 or 3 times. I think if we're doing something like for an event for a nonprofit, like what Melinda was referencing, we'll then move them on to another place. But it has to be pretty quick. I mean, flowers have a very short shelf life. So when we first started and we had no cooler and we were getting 10, cars full of flowers, we had to move them in a day. And it was really challenging. Much easier now that we have refrigeration and a process where we can extend their life for a few more days. It gives us much more efficiency and sort of ability to plan.
And, depending on the flowers, some of them last longer than others. Having been down there and volunteered with our club, you could see, you can kind of pick it out. No, this one's kind of on its way out, and take it out. Yeah. And everybody has different skill levels. Some, some are beautiful. Like you look at this and go, oh my God, you thought a professional florist did it. And it was one of the ladies standing next to me. Or
Right.
it could be a very teeny bouquet. Now, when people think about flowers, many times they think about that large bouquet, but a lot of the seniors really just want that small one that they can put on their side table and be able to look at it. When it's too big, sometimes it's hard to manage, right?
Yeah, that was kind of a learning for us. I mean, we've gotten smarter and smarter as we've watched, and you've experienced it, Melinda, because in our dancing, you'll try to give out a
Yeah,
big bouquet and they don't want that one. And it makes sense,
right,
right? They have to be able to handle it. It can't be heavy. They don't have a
right.
lot of room in their room, so it has to be something small that they can sit on a counter. So definitely, smaller is better many times.
That's
And
why I started saving the jars for you.
yeah, the jars are perfect. A ball jar, kind of a canning jar is perfect. We also, I lost my train of thought again. Something about the jars. Oh, I don't know. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, Melinda.
Donating the jars, making sure they're clean. I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of
donating
it.
the jars. Yeah, of course, donating the jars and making sure they're clean. And we always need them, and we have drop-offs around the city where people can drop them off, and it's easy for them. We
Where
also
are
have
the drop-offs?
facilities. There's one in Shaker Heights. There's one in Cleveland Heights. There's one in Rocky River, and then there's at our Midtown facility in Cleveland.
Are
So
those things all listed on your website?
they are. They are.
So they can do drop-offs there, or they can come downtown. And can they sign up to volunteer through the website as well?
All the volunteering is done through the website. Yes, it is. We have, again, as I mentioned, we have pickup volunteers, we have workshop volunteers, and we have delivery volunteers. So we're really right now looking for people who want to deliver, and we're trying to get back in to doing more and more individual visits and individual, walking the halls of it and touching people and meeting people versus what we had to do during the pandemic, which was
Right.
kind of drop at the doorstep. So we're really looking for folks right now who want to make that part of their volunteerism, to be able to spend an hour delivering flowers into a hospital or a care facility.
Yeah, that personal contact when you can actually look them in the eye, touch their hand, which one do you like? They love to pick out their own colors, right? People have colors. I
Yeah.
think it's huge. It's a big piece of what you do. The flowers are great, but if somebody just walks in that already works there, it loses just a little bit. It's not the same.
Not the same. It's really great to have a sort of a stranger come in and visit, than as opposed to the caregivers that are seen day in and day out, for sure. I remember now what I was going to say. You said about talent. So our kind of mottos at the workshop are, it's really not a professional florist situation. It's a neighbor gathering up some flowers as if they would do from their yard and giving them to another neighbor. So it's a neighbor to neighbor gesture. It's not a professional floral delivery. And our standard of quality is, would you like to receive it? So if you make something and it's something that you would like to receive, then it's great. So that kind of helps guide whether the flower is too old or not. Would you want this flower? And I think that helps people a lot to get more comfortable with what we're asking them to do, because we don't require any skill level at all. And you'll find that it's much easier to arrange than you think it is.
Oh, yeah. I think it's nice too to have some younger people coming in, because many of them have never had the opportunity to garden or to work with flowers at all.
Yes.
So that gives them an opportunity to see what they can do.
Mm-hmm. We just had a teen group from the Cleveland Housing Network come in. They were in a camp all summer that the Cleveland Housing Network was sponsoring for people that lived in their different apartment buildings. And this group of high school kids came in. I think there were 14 or 15 of them, and they spent 2 hours, arranging flowers, and none of them had done it before. And at the end, I think they all did great. But there were a few that were just really excited that they had done this and had this experience, because they maybe had a creative side. One of the boys was telling me he was an artist and he really loved this kind of new venture because he could tap into his creativity, but he on his own would never have tried this method of, this type of an activity. So it was, and then they took the flowers to one of their apartment buildings. So it was seniors, and they had a little party with all the seniors, and they got to distribute the flowers. So it was a kind of a great full circle experience. But you're right. There's a lot of people who come through our facility who have never tried something like this before.
I think the great takeaway is it's not just the flowers that provide the kindness, it's everything about this. From the donation of the flowers to the donation of the containers to the volunteers who come put them together or deliver them. And then getting out to mostly seniors, not all seniors, but mostly seniors. I think it's a full, as you already pointed out, a full circle of giving kindness away. One thing begets another, begets another.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think that when I went into this, I expected the impact that we have on the residents, because I've had a lot of personal experience and, seen those experiences, but I didn't really think about what it would do for the volunteers. And I think that it's, as good for the giver as it is for the receiver, because I know for me, it really makes me feel happy and energized when I get to see the response that we get. And I think for our volunteers, it's a similar experience. Even if they're not out seeing the recipient, they know that their part in the chain is eventually getting us to our goal of being able to deliver the flowers. And so it seems to be a kind of a win, happy thing for all involved.
Mm-hmm.
When there aren't a lot of happy things around these days. So
no, there's not. But it's interesting how it's evolved. I mean, really, you like the idea, and COVID hit, and it was so necessary during COVID. It really, really was. But yet it's morphed into something more now. And I imagine as we move forward, we're going to see you grow even more.
Yeah, I hope so. We will deliver probably 12 to 13,000 bouquets this year.
Wow.
We're at almost 31,000 since we've founded. We've been into like 150 different care facilities. So and as I said, we're barely scraping the surface of the potential supply that we have. We just have to have the resources and the, sort of the leadership and some additional funding to be able to take it further. So that's where we're working on now.
Where we're headed, right? So we zip through this, but I want you to have the opportunity to tell people from your heart why they should support you and volunteer or donate, and then give them a little more exact information about your fundraiser. Because I know I'm going to be at the fundraiser. So if y'all want to meet me in person, I'm going to be there.
That's great. So social isolation and loneliness have both emotional and physical impacts on individuals. And studies show that it can have the equivalent effect of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so it's not just a feel good, it's an important part of overall health. And we've found a way through flowers to have a vehicle to be able to reach out and touch people in a special way. And hopefully that's making an impact on them, not just in the moment, but in the long term. And it's such a simple idea, but it has so much power behind it. And it has so much opportunity in our community to help plug in and reach out to people who otherwise are not connected. And so you should join us and you should support us, because it's a fun and happy thing to do. It's making a positive impact. It's it's akin to giving a random act of kindness of other sorts that people feel good about. But it's really making a bigger impact. And we have a lot of potential to help in Cleveland, and we're stuck to some extent because we need additional resources, which leads to our fundraiser. So it is September 9th. It's called Bloom Fest. It is September 9th. It is at the Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging Conference Center, which is at Martin Luther King and Fairhill. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. It's a fun gala cocktail party with, kind of a fun dress theme of fashionably floral. We'll all see how we interpret that, but that's part of the fun. Silent auction. We're going to raffle some art pieces. So we have different artists around town who have painted for us floral themed paintings that we're going to raffle. And I just think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're hoping to see as many people as we can there. Tickets can be purchased through our website. So our website is bigheartedblooms.org. On there's a tab for volunteering. So you can join us that way by volunteering a shift. There's a tab for Bloomfest, so you can learn more about the event then and buy your tickets through that. And also read more about our organization and the accomplishments we've had. So we hope that people will go there and check us out and learn more, and hopefully find a way to get engaged.
Absolutely. And if you haven't seen, were you on channel 3 or 5?
I was a couple weeks ago. I was on channel 3, yes, with the Benjamin Rose Institute. We partner with them a lot, and we were on there together doing some flower arranging with Holly Strano, and so it was a fun thing. And then the actual event that we were promoting was this week, so we were able to go out into the community with them and do a flower arranging session with some seniors out in the community.
So my hope, part of this program is about getting through life's challenges. That's where this came from my cancer journey, which we kind of bonded right there because we've both been through that, is that people will see somebody who took one little idea and made it bloom, literally, with what you're doing. And I think, you know, many people feel small, like I can't do anything to make a difference, but you can. You can meet
Yeah.
the challenges of loneliness. You can be kind to one person. So take this idea, work with Sue. That's my advice. I do. And I'm able to give back in the community that way, and see what you can do to help somebody else. Because again, it's that one act of random kindness that can make a difference in someone's day. It can save their life. Literally.
It could. And I would also say, if you have an idea, don't hesitate to jump off the cliff, because somehow one of the things I've learned through this journey is whenever things get tight or difficult, something happens. Someone comes to help. Someone shows up to solve the need. And it's been very interesting. Well, it's been amazing, actually. For instance, a couple things, and then I know that you were closing up, Melinda, but
Nope,
when we first started, we didn't have a website. We were just on social media, and someone called me and said, why don't you have a website? And I said, well, none of us have this. We haven't figured out how to do it yet, and we don't have the money to hire it out. And 2 weeks later, I had the website we currently still have. And I've never met this woman. She just called me, did it. 2 weeks later, it was done. We needed a cooler to be able to, support our operations. And so we were doing a little fundraiser to get them funds for the cooler. And we were successful in that. And a man I didn't know came up to me and said, okay, now that you've had the funds, who's going to build the cooler? And I said, well, I don't know. We haven't gotten there yet. And he said, I'll build it for you. And his company gave, 10 days of volunteer time. And he used those days and he built a walk-in cooler for us. And I didn't even know him, and he'd never really interacted with us before. So that's happened over and over and over in our journey. And I feel like sometimes if you just put yourself out there to the universe, the universe responds. And so I would encourage anyone who has an idea and they feel uncertain about it, or, they're hesitant to do it from time or whatever perspective, just push, just push, because it's incredibly rewarding, and you just never know how well you'll be supported.
Right. Well, your acts of kindness came back to you.
Yes.
Somebody was kind to you.
Yeah.
I understand. I think this show came from that very same thing. I was trying to give back in the community. Karen was watching me, little did I know, on social media. And here we are today. And it took me a year to take that job of her dogging me about, oh, you need to try to do this. But my goal, like yours, was to help somebody. That was my goal. I was only out there doing my little 3-minute videos, just trying to help somebody get through the day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, good begets good. So absolutely. You got to get out there.
The dog is barking.
Oh,
All right. Thanks so much for being on the show, Sue.
Thank you. It was fun.
wonderful.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.